My father and stepmother destroyed my life. After my mother's funeral, my greedy father kicked me out of our home and married her ex, my stepmother, who was nothing but a schemer. With a cold smile, she reminded me that I had forgotten about my $2 million inheritance. That's when I made a choice. I would seek revenge with the help of my grandfather. Little did I know, in the coming weeks, unexpected events would unfold, leading me down a path I never imagined. My name is Emily, and I'm 16 years old. I live in San Antonio, Texas, but my life hasn't been easy. It all started when I was just 11, the day my world shattered forever. I lost my mother in a car accident, an event that haunts me every single day. What I didn't know then was that the accident wasn't an accident at all. I remember that day vividly. The sun was shining bright, and I was playing outside, laughing with my friends. I had no idea that my mother was on her way home from work, never to return. When the news came, everything changed. I was devastated, and the grief consumed me. "Emily, sweetie, come here." My grandfather, James, called from the kitchen. He was a retired professor in his 70s, and after my mother's death, he took me in. He was all I had left, and I could see the pain in his eyes as he tried to comfort me. "Yeah, Grandpa," I replied, wiping my tears away. "Dinner is ready. I made your favorite macaroni and cheese." He smiled, trying to lighten the mood. As I sat at the table, I glanced at the empty chair where my mother used to sit. The silence felt heavy, filled with unspoken words. "I miss her," I finally admitted. "I know, Emily. I miss her too," James said softly. He looked down, unable to hide his sorrow. "But we have each other. We can get through this." Just when I thought life couldn't get any worse, Robert, my father, entered the picture again. After my mother's death, I had hoped he would step up and be the father I needed. Instead, he started dating Samantha, an old flame of his. I didn't understand how he could move on so quickly. Samantha was in her late 40s, and it didn't take long for her to push her way into our lives. At first, I tried to be welcoming, thinking maybe she could help fill the void my mother left behind. But I quickly realized that she had other plans. "Emily, it's time you moved in with me and Samantha," Robert announced one evening. I was sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the TV. "You'll be living with us now. We're getting married." "Married? You can't be serious." I shot back, my heart racing.
"What about me?"
"I need you. Mom just died."
He didn't look at me.
"Samantha, and I want to be a family. You're old enough to take care of yourself." Heartbroken and betrayed, I was forced to leave my home. "You can't do this." I cried as he packed my things. "This is my home too." "Not anymore, Emily. Samantha wants nothing to do with you. You'll live with your grandfather." His voice was cold, and I felt tears streaming down my face as I was taken to my grandfather's house. James welcomed me with open arms, but I felt hollow. "You'll be safe here," he assured me, sensing my despair. "We'll figure this out together." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Samantha had always been overly friendly, but her smile felt more like a mask. She wanted to erase me, to take my place in Robert's life. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Samantha became more controlling, often criticizing me. "You're just a burden," she would say, her voice dripping with disdain. "If your mother hadn't been so reckless, she'd still be alive." I was shocked and hurt by her words.
How could she say such things?
I wished I could escape the reality of my life, but there was nowhere to go. One evening, I overheard Robert and Samantha arguing in their bedroom. "I can't stand her," Samantha yelled. "She's a constant reminder of what we've lost." Robert's voice was low and tense. "We have to get rid of her. The money will be ours. She doesn't deserve it." I felt my heart drop. What money? My mother had left me an inheritance worth $2 million, and now I realized they wanted it all for themselves. I needed to find a way to protect myself, to expose their deceit. James noticed my distress. "Emily, you need to talk to me if something's wrong," he said one night as we sat on the porch, the night air heavy with unspoken fears. "It's Samantha. She's always saying mean things to me, and I think she wants to hurt me, I confessed, my voice trembling. James's expression turned serious. I've sensed something isn't right.
Let's keep an eye on them.
We'll find out the truth. In my gut, I knew that I couldn't trust them. They were plotting something, and I needed to be ready. Little did I know how deeply their betrayal would cut, and how it would set off a chain of events that would change our lives forever. As days passed, I felt more isolated and scared. I often sat in my room, imagining how I could escape the darkness surrounding me. But with James by my side, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps together, we could uncover the truth behind my mother's death and stop Samantha and Robert from taking everything from me. The storm was brewing, and I could sense it. But I had no idea how fierce the tempest would be or what it would reveal. The stage was set for betrayal, and I was determined to find the strength to fight back. The days turned into weeks, and the unease in my home grew thicker. Robert and Samantha wore their fake smiles like masks, but I could see the cracks beneath them. My nights were filled with restless dreams, visions of my mother and echoes of Samantha's cruel words. I felt lost in a web of deceit, but deep down, I knew I had to stay strong for my mother's memory. One evening, as I sat in my room studying, James knocked softly on my door. "Can we talk, Emily?" he asked, his voice gentle yet firm. "Of course, Grandpa." I put my books down, my heart racing with anticipation. I wanted to share my fears and worries, hoping he would help me make sense of everything. We settled in the living room, the warm glow of the lamp casting soft shadows. "I've been doing some thinking," James began, his expression serious. "I think we should hire a private investigator." My eyes widened. "A private investigator? Do you really think things are that bad?" "I believe Samantha and Robert are hiding something," he replied, leaning forward. "If we can gather evidence, we might expose their true intentions." I felt a surge of relief, mixed with anxiety. What if they find out? What if they try to hurt us? James placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "We'll be careful. The truth has a way of coming out, and I want to protect you." The next day, James contacted a private detective named Mr. Lawson. He was in his late 40s, with a stern but kind demeanor. When he arrived at our home, I felt a mix of hope and fear. Would he be able to help us uncover the truth? "Tell me everything," Mr. Lawson said as he settled into a chair, his notepad ready. James and I exchanged glances, and I took a deep breath. "I think my father and stepmother want to hurt me," I started, my voice trembling. "They're not who they seem. I overheard them talking about money and how they want to get rid of me." Mr. Lawson nodded, taking notes. "I'll look into their backgrounds and see what I can find. Sometimes people's pasts hold the key to their intentions." As he worked, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe we could uncover the truth and put a stop to Samantha and Robert's plans. Days turned into a week, and every day felt like an eternity. Finally, Mr. Lawson called us in for a meeting. "I have some information that you need to hear," he said, his expression grave. "It's about Samantha." My heart raced as I sat down. "What did you find out?" "Before she married Robert, she was involved in a car accident that resulted in the death of her first husband," he began. "The details surrounding it are suspicious. Witnesses say that she had been arguing with him just before the accident." I gasped, my mind racing. "So, she might have had something to do with that, too?" "Possibly," Mr. Lawson replied. "There's also evidence that links her to your mother's accident. I found hampered records indicating that the brakes on your mother's car were disabled before the crash." "No," I exclaimed, feeling sick to my stomach. "This can't be happening. They did it on purpose." James's face turned pale. "Emily, this is serious. We need to take this evidence to the police." "But what if they find out we're investigating them?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "We have to take that risk," James insisted. "Your safety comes first." After hours of debate, I finally agreed. It was time to confront the truth, no matter how painful. I felt a mix of dread and determination as we prepared to meet the police. That evening, James and I made our way to the local police station. The building loomed in front of us, a symbol of hope and fear. As we stepped inside, I felt my heart racing. Would they believe us? Would they take our claims seriously? We met Officer Ramirez, a kind woman in her 30s who listened intently as we shared our story. "You're saying that your father and stepmother are involved in your mother's death?" she asked, her brow furrowing. "Yes," I replied, my voice shaking. "We have evidence that they tampered with her car." Officer Ramirez took a deep breath. "This is serious, Emily. I'll need to review your evidence and speak with Mr. Lawson as well." As she gathered her notes, I glanced at James, who looked both proud and anxious. We had taken a step toward justice, but I knew the road ahead would be difficult. As we left the police station, I felt a mixture of hope and fear. The truth was finally coming to light, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Robert and Samantha would retaliate. They were cunning, and I had to be ready for anything. That night, I lay awake in bed, thoughts racing through my mind. I couldn't stop picturing my mother's face, the way she smiled, the warmth of her hugs. I had to do this for her, to ensure that those who had wronged us faced justice. I felt a fire ignite within me, a determination to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The storm was approaching, and I could feel the winds of change swirling around us. I had to be brave. I had to be strong. And most importantly, I had to be ready for what was coming next. The days dragged on after our meeting with Officer Ramirez. I felt a sense of dread hanging over me as we waited for news about the investigation. James was doing his best to keep my spirits up, but the looming threat of Robert and Samantha made it difficult to find peace. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table working on homework, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mr. Lawson. "We need to talk. Urgent." My heart raced. I immediately looked up at James, who was reading a newspaper in the living room. "Grandpa, Mr. Lawson wants to meet us. He said it's urgent," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. James folded the newspaper, concern written all over his face. "Let's go meet him. We need to know what's happening." We drove to the detective's office, the silence in the car heavy with unspoken worries. As we entered the office, Mr. Lawson greeted us with a grim expression. "Thank you for coming. We need to discuss some very serious findings." "Is it about Samantha?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. "Yes, and it's not good," he replied. He gestured for us to sit down. "I've uncovered some information that changes everything. Samantha was not only involved in your mother's accident, but was also linked to other suspicious activities." "What do you mean?" I pressed, a knot forming in my stomach. Mr. Lawson leaned forward, his voice low. "I found records showing that Samantha was financially struggling before your mother's accident. She was in serious debt. After your mother died, she inherited a significant sum of money, which she used to pay off her debts. It looks like she planned this all along." My mind reeled as the pieces started to fall into place. "You mean she killed my mother for money?" "It appears so. And there's more," he continued. "I discovered that Robert was aware of her plans. He may have even assisted her in tampering with your mother's brakes." James clenched his fists, his face filled with anger. How could he betray his own family like that? "This is going to require solid evidence," Mr. Lawson said, looking at both of us. "I need you two to help me gather more information. We need proof of their conspiracy if we're going to bring them down." "What can we do?" I asked, my heart racing with fear and determination. "Start by keeping an eye on them. Document everything you see. If they say anything incriminating, we need to know. And don't let them know we're watching," Mr. Lawson instructed. As we left the office, I felt a mix of dread and resolve. I couldn't believe the extent of the betrayal. I was terrified of what Samantha and Robert might do if they found out we were onto them. The following week, James and I kept a close watch on Robert and Samantha. It felt like a scene from a movie, hiding in shadows and listening for anything suspicious. I often felt like I was walking on a tightrope, balancing my safety with the desire for justice. One afternoon, as I was sitting in my room, I heard voices coming from the living room. I crept down the hallway and peeked around the corner. James was on the phone, looking worried. "Are you sure?" "I can't let her be in danger," he said, his voice tense. I felt a chill run down my spine.
What was he talking about?
I knew I had to confront him. I walked into the room. Grandpa, who are you talking to? James quickly hung up the phone, his face a mixture of concern and anger. Emily, you shouldn't be eavesdropping. It's not safe. What's going on? I pressed, feeling a surge of frustration. Is it about Robert and Samantha? He took a deep breath. Yes, but it's more complicated than that. They know we're investigating, and I'm worried about your safety. What do you mean? I felt my heart race. They wouldn't hurt me, would they? I don't know, but we need to be careful. I think they're planning something, he replied, worry etched across his face. That night, I lay in bed, my mind racing with possibilities. What could they possibly do? I felt vulnerable and scared, but I knew I couldn't back down now. I had to protect myself and my mother's legacy. The next morning, I awoke to a text from Mr. Lawson. Meet me at the usual spot. I have important news. I glanced at James, who was busy making breakfast. I have to go out for a bit, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Be careful, Emily, he warned, his eyes filled with concern. As I made my way to the meeting spot, my heart raced. I had no idea what Mr. Lawson would tell me, but I hoped it would bring us closer to justice. When I arrived, Mr. Lawson was waiting for me, looking even more serious than before. I have something you need to see, he said, handing me a file. This is evidence that will help us take them down. As I flipped through the documents, my heart sank. The truth was darker than I had imagined. This was more than just a betrayal. It was a chilling conspiracy that threatened to destroy everything I loved. I could feel the storm closing in, and I knew we were on the brink of something significant. Are you ready for this? Mr. Lawson asked, his eyes locked onto mine. I took a deep breath, my resolve hardening.
Yes.
I want justice for my mother, whatever it takes. The battle was about to begin, and I was determined to fight. The tension in the air felt thick as I clutched the evidence Mr. Lawson had given me. Each piece of paper seemed to carry the weight of my mother's memory, the betrayal I had endured, and the fight for justice that lay ahead. I knew that now was the time to confront Robert and Samantha. They had taken too much from me, and it was time to reclaim what was rightfully mine. After our meeting, I rushed home, my heart pounding with anticipation. James was in the living room, pacing nervously. What did Mr. Lawson say? He asked, his eyes filled with concern. I have evidence. We can take them down, I replied, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. James nodded, determination in his eyes. Let's confront them together. We can't let them get away with this. We devised a plan. The next day, we invited Robert and Samantha over for dinner under the guise of wanting to mend our broken family ties. I felt a knot in my stomach as I prepared the table, but I had to stay focused. This was for my mother. When they arrived, Samantha greeted me with a bright smile that felt like a dagger to my heart. Emily, it's so good to see you, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Yeah, great to see you too, I replied, forcing a smile as I ushered them to the dining table. As we ate, the atmosphere was tense. I could feel James's eyes on me, silently urging me to take the plunge. Finally, I gathered my courage. Robert, Samantha, there's something we need to discuss, I said, my voice steady. What is it, Emily? Robert asked, feigning ignorance. I know about the accident, I said, looking directly at Samantha. I know you tampered with my mother's car brakes. Samantha's smile faded, replaced by a cold glare. What are you talking about? I have evidence, I declared, pulling out the documents Mr. Lawson had given me. You planned this, didn't you? You wanted her out of the way to get to the money. Robert's face went pale. Emily, you don't know what you're talking about. This is ridiculous. But I pressed on, my voice rising. You wanted to inherit my mother's estate. You wanted me out of the picture, so you could live your life without any consequences. James stood beside me, his presence a fortress of support. You too are sick. We have proof of your conspiracy, and you will be held accountable for your actions. Samantha laughed, a harsh, chilling sound. You think anyone will believe you? You're just a child with wild fantasies. Watch me, I said, my voice unwavering. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins as I prepared to make the call. As I dialed Officer Ramirez's number, Robert lunged forward, panic in his eyes. "You don't have to do this, Emily. We can talk about this." But it was too late. "Officer Ramirez, I need you to come to my house right away. We have evidence of a crime," I said, my voice steady. Within minutes, the police arrived, and I felt a rush of relief wash over me. They took Robert and Samantha into custody, their faces twisted in disbelief. I could hardly breathe as I watched them being handcuffed, the weight of the moment crashing down on me. "You're making a big mistake, Emily," Robert shouted as they led him out the door. "No, you're the one who made a mistake by betraying your own family," I shouted back, feeling a surge of empowerment. With Robert and Samantha arrested, I finally felt the chains of my past beginning to break. I could breathe a little easier, knowing justice would prevail. In the days that followed, the trial unfolded, revealing the shocking details of their conspiracy. The evidence was overwhelming, and I felt a sense of closure as I watched them being held accountable for their actions. With their imprisonment, I could finally begin to heal. My grandfather James and I moved forward, honoring my mother's memory and rebuilding our lives. I learned that while betrayal can devastate, resilience and truth can shine through the darkness. With the support of my grandfather, I was no longer just a victim. I was a survivor, ready to embrace my future and reclaim the life that was taken from me. The storm had passed, and as I stood on the porch, I looked out at the horizon with hope. I knew my mother would be proud.